Hello, everyone. How you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all keeping safe. If this is your first time of watching me, my name is Blessing, and this is Break H Barriers.
It's all about humanity.
Press that red button down there, the subscribe button. Press the notification bell to notify you whenever I upload. You are aware that I have uploaded, and also make sure you share and like. So, on this occasion, I would like to address the issue of culture. I believe culture is a diverse topic because it includes diversity and different ways humans deal with matters. My own way of defining culture is a way of life humans have devised to live here on earth, to relate with one another, and to handle the issues of life. Culture is prominent everywhere, wherever you go, in any parts of the world. As long as you have human beings living there, they have devised this way of life to relate with one another in the community that they live and how to handle the issues of life. So invariably, this way of life influences that community. As long as you're born into that community, it influences your way of life. It influences your thoughts, how you view the world, and how you view and see other people who don't live in that community, and of course one another in that same community. So I have 3 questions awaiting me to answer. I will be addressing those 3 questions.
First question is, what are some of the things that can define a culture?
So what can define a culture? I mean, every culture is unique. There's no culture that is higher than the other. For every culture, there are different things one can learn about life and how to handle life. Fortunately, I've got two different cultural backgrounds. One is the Nigerian culture, and the second is the British culture. I'll be using this as my references. I could remember when I first came into the British culture. It was a cultural shock for me, and that was an aspect that people don't really tell you. You just come and you kind of see how differently people are living their lives and responding to issues of life in a totally different way from the culture that I was born and raised in, where hierarchy is paramount. In the Nigerian culture, it's a hierarchical culture. But coming over to the UK, there is some sort of hierarchy in the British society, but the hierarchy in the British society is more of equalitarian type of hierarchy, which brings me to collectivism and individualism. That's another aspect that I found huge difference between the culture that I was coming from and the culture that I eventually embraced. And what I mean by the collectivism and the individualism is that in the Western society, individualism is promoted. You can see children are being raised to be independent, be on their own feet, and to be able to do things on their own. But of course, that comes with its own negative side. In every culture, there's always negative and positive. One should be able to have a balance to these things because there's no society that is perfect. There's no perfect society. There's no perfect way of doing things. But when we are able to mix, we'll be able to learn from one another. And these are the benefits of travel out of your culture to see other cultures, take the good things out of it and drop the, bring that balance to it. But in the culture that I was coming from, collectivism is promoted, and collectivism is a way of life whereby to the community is promoted. You have this sect of group, so you belong to this sect of group, and in this sect of group you become kind of loyal. As an individual in this sect of group, you become loyal to this sect of group. Whatever the group determines is what you follow. So when you follow that determined decision, then you are not really able to express your individualism. You are not really able to express your individual thought like you would really want to. And that's what you find in the Western society. Yeah, next question.
The next question is, what are the role of the men, women, and children in a culture?
There's actually similarities in these two cultures that I have experienced. Okay, in the Nigerian culture, the role of the man is to provide for the family financially, most oftentimes, and to kind of be like a protector really over the wife and the children. And oftentimes the man is, in that culture, the man is breadwinner of the family, whereby the wife is a homemaker. But these days, even in that culture, it's changing. Women are actually beginning to take their place. They are beginning to now understand that they need to also become economically independent because of the experiences in the past of some women. And when they lose their husbands, the extended family, that's from the husband's side, the extended family kind of takes over the entire property of the man and leaving the woman and the children with nothing. It's changing now because most Nigerian women are becoming economically independent, so they don't really have to rely on the man. When it comes to children, for example, I'm going to talk about the case of divorce. In the case of divorce, children, when divorce happens between a man and a woman in the Nigerian culture, most of the time is the man that takes the children, takes responsibility of the children. The children are actually given to the man to care for because of the financial or economical power. Then, on the other hand, in the British culture, in ratio, the man is still a man's world, but the level as compared to the Nigerian culture is different because you have more women that are economically independent as opposed to the other culture. And again, like I gave an example with the other culture, in the case of divorce, the women in the British society or in the British culture, the women usually keep the children with them, oftentimes, except if challenged. So women are actually better protected, I would say. There's always this form and level of respect that is expected of everyone. When you're a child relating to an adult in that society, the culture demands that the child shows high respect to the adult, depending on the age of the adult and depending on the status of the adult. The child must show respect, for example, to their high respect to their parents and of course other members of the family. But I will give you an example. When the adults in the family converge for a discussion, the children are not expected to participate except if the adult actually gives permission to the child. Then they can go ahead and do that.
Next question is how is education in this culture, and how rude do you find the stereotypes?
In the primary and the secondary schools, with the exception of the university, children are scolded. When you do the unacceptable, children are allowed to be smacked. In that society, they don't see anything wrong with that because culturally, the community, they believe it takes the community to raise a child, not just the parents. And so the community, especially in the absence of the parents, for example, if the children are in school or they're just walking on the streets and they do things that are not acceptable, any other adult can intervene and scold that child or children. And that there is seen as normal. Culturally, that's the way things are done there. As opposed to the UK, where children are not allowed to be smacked. So, if anything, children are told in primary schools and secondary schools that if their parents scold or smack them, they should tell the authorities or call the police. In the Nigerian culture, whereas you dare not do that. You dare not call the police on your parents. That is seen as disrespectful. That is seen as shameful. That is seen as foreign in the Nigerian culture. But in the British culture, I believe they do that in order to protect the children because of past bad experiences where children were abused, neglected, and most often died out of this abuse and neglect. So I actually understand why the British culture do that. And when it comes to the community involvement in the British society, it's kind of really different from what I see when you see, especially when the secondary school children are coming out of school and they are misbehaving probably on the buses or in public. The community really don't get involved. Rather than get involved, you see them calling the police on the children and resolve the matter between the kids.
How rude and offensive do you think these stereotypes could get?
When you talk about rude, offensive stereotypes, I mean, there are loads of stereotypes. I've heard some people say that Nigerians are too loud. Nigerians, speak too loud. It's not that they are loud per se, but it's that society, it's a cultural influence on the people themselves. That's the way the culture there is, whereby people speak loud. When you speak very softly, you're considered not brave enough or timid. Whereas in the British culture, that's not really the case. So you coming from a different type of culture where things are done differently, and seeing that person quickly now tag the person as typical, of that set of people, I think it's not a way of being able to relate with other people or understand why they do what they do and be able to accept them for who they are and not particularly being judged for the way they do things just because it's different from the way you do your things. So that's all the questions. There are some certain aspects that I would have loved to touch, but I will not be able to do all that in one video. So probably in the subsequent video, I might be addressing some other aspects of culture because it's huge. Culture is a huge topic, and I just believe we humans will be able to understand one another much better if we address one another from a cultural point of view rather than from a racial point of view, which is highly dividing us, especially in the West, e.g. the United States of America. We all can see what is going on there, and it's got to do with race. Seeing other people as aliens just because of the way they do their own things, or just because of the tone of their skin, or just because of the way their hair, they chose to style their hair. So it's a really dividing, bitter, and disunited way to live. I don't think a society that chooses to move forward, especially in 2021, will be able to do that if every time people in that society have to relate with one another, they do it from the lens of race. It's really, really unhealthy, and it's a huge problem in the West. And it's sad, very sad, that we can belittle one another with the beautiful artistic way we have all been created. Because I can't imagine us all looking the same, straight hair, fair skin, everything the same. We all look like robots. But we have all been created able to blend. So I think it's high time humanity stop looking or addressing one another from the point of view of race. Rather, let's do it from the point of view of culture. Understand why this sect of people are behaving the way they behave, because of the society that they are raised and the way that society has chosen to live life. Take care and have a culturally educative good week. Cheers. Bye. Bye, y'all.